Anupriya, so there is this kind of metric that you can use to see what the Unstereotype Alliance will achieve or can achieve. How do you see that working here?
I think it works very well, and at least from our own organization level, I can share with you that we've been actively been part of the launch chapter of UA in India, and within our O group, apart from the fact that of course there is work being created like that, but we want to shape that more proactively in a more disciplined manner further. So we are operationalizing an action group to define clearly, and these are people from various levels in terms of what do we need to change and how to go about doing it. Because one is general awareness, which, as I said, has been there for some time in the corporations, including within our group, and there are a lot of areas that we have moved on. Like, for example, we have initiatives like Propel Her, which is a full program on returnee-ship, where women sort of come who've taken a pause in their careers. It's an active recruitment program. Similarly, we are an equal pay organization, and we got this externally certified. We realized that it's not something that we say ourselves. We got it externally sort of audited and certified, and we did a full campaign, a full celebration of that a few years back. So the thing is that the awareness on these areas is fairly high amongst both leadership as well as people down the line. But we believe we can do more on that. So like Susan said, these metrics, I think it's important to proactively put a plan in place to move those metrics over a period of time. And they are not going to move on their own. So I think a proactive agenda is required.
Priya, will you be able to illustrate, because you all have had hands-on experience, in the public gaze of large, iconic, multi-million-dollar brands making these changes and shifts in their advertising communication. You want to take us through or walk us through one illustration and how you managed to make that change, and whether it was difficult or what, actually not whether it was difficult, what were some of the questions that get asked and need to be answered in that process?
So, Anuradha, I think the fact is, and I think Subhash said it, it's not a one-off thing that you do, right? It's something that you need to do repeatedly, continuously. And, there are many examples, but maybe let me take the example of Dove, which in the world of beauty has created, globally, across countries, country after country, the whole idea of real beauty and allowing women to feel positive, to feel confident in themselves, and really allowing beauty to be a source of confidence.
Yeah, but Priya, I'm sorry, I'm just going to jump in for a split second to say that Dove was perhaps the one brand in your portfolio that was already the most receptive, isn't it, in terms of what it stood for and its iconic communication. Will you take another one and walk us through it?
I could do that. Let's take Brooke Bond then.
Okay.
And again, I can do this brand after brand, and you will say to me that, oh, but that brand, but we've been on this journey, and I think that's what I can demonstrate. So let's take Brooke Bond and the work that was done a year ago on, including the transgender community into the community, and really that they are a part of the community. And I think, it's another way to unstereotype. So really, you can take brand after brand, and you will realize I will be naming many of the most successful brands in the country. Is the journey difficult? It is absolutely difficult, because, you have to find a linkage between the product idea and the story that you're telling. And I think that's the craft, and that's the work that the creative teams are doing. And a part of this is actually having the right diverse teams, Anuradha. I think for me, I think it is not just the advertising, but it's the people who create the advertising actually being diverse, inclusive, and we find that that makes a huge difference as well.
What I'm curious about is when, down the line, when the teams who execute these decisions, when they are dealing with market share pressures, they're dealing today, let's say, with an environment where consumer demand is so dampened. They're talking about a time where people's sentiment, public sentiment is deeply affected. How do these goals, these commitments, how do those get impacted, and how do you ensure that those commitments feel urgent enough at a time where other things have come to play, where market share concerns are a problem, revenues are a problem?
So Anuradha, absolutely, I think all the pressures on the teams are real. But I think it comes from the starting point that this is what really consumers and women are looking for. So let me give you the example of a most bottom of the pyramid brand, Wheel. And if you think of what the work that we've done on Wheel recently, where we have talked about this idea of ghar se career, or careers at home. In today's environment, with the pandemic, with the economic pressures, with all the challenges that people are going through, this is absolutely still relevant, and it does solve your market share pressures and everything else if you're actually connecting with consumers. And I think at the fundamental level, we must ask ourselves, that actually consumers have moved there, Anuradha. And therefore, you are actually doing real revenue building when you do much of this work.
Right. Subhash, will the ASCII code that exists, will it need to sort of expand to include the Unstereotype Alliance's goals, or do you think the code as is can factor in the commitments that you all will make as a member of the alliance?
Well, I think that's a very good question. The current ASCII code is fairly encompassing, if I may put it that way, already. However, I do believe that specific guidelines need to be thought of on this specific topic. We are actually actively considering that. We are thinking on that. We've been in touch with how the ASA in UK is doing it. They've done it fairly well. We are adapting and thinking about what is relevant for India. We've also launched one of our biggest projects this year. And that's where I think ASCII's objectives and UA's objectives kind of came together very, very well, because one of our biggest projects at ASCII is something called Gender Next, which we've just launched. It's a massive all India research amongst women, amongst influencers, amongst marketeers, amongst creative directors, amongst consumers, to not just look at the narratives or how women were portrayed in advertising in the past, but where are the emerging themes? So we want actionable insights coming out of this research that marketeers can use, because we believe that one of our roles, apart from policing the narrative, is also to guide the narrative.
Sure. Susan, you all just had the Global Member Summit. You want to tell us what the COVID challenges, the very real challenges that this experience has had and its impact on women, substantive impact. More women are out of employment. More women are economically disadvantaged as a result of this experience. How does that influence what the Unstereotype Alliance hopes to achieve?
Well, I actually think that the Unstereotype Alliance is going to be even more important because of exactly as you said, that, women have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. More women have lost their jobs, less women have regained their jobs. And now in India, of course, we've had the second wave. Also, more women have experienced violence as they've been, faced with being locked into their family situations under lockdowns. So we know that actually diversity in firms, both in leadership and also in the decision making, really improves, again, the bottom line. It's got a measurable impact on profit. And so I think being able to have more women in decision-making in firms, looking at creating campaigns that are more inclusive, is going to gradually build back better. And this is actually what one of the key messages was in this global meeting with our executive director.
In all this conversation about gender representation and gender stereotypes in advertising and in the media, we have got to talk about how men are represented and whether the Unstereotype Alliance will also affect that, but in a moment.